Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you are listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom, as we welcome today The Lost Voice, with John Studi and Jacob Nelson.
Welcome to the Lost Voice radio program, where we seek to rediscover the lost voice of wisdom in our modern culture. This is your host, Jacob Nelson, and absent today is Jonathan Studi, but I have a wonderful replacement in Justin Zimmich. So, Justin Zimmich, you've listened to every one of our episodes so far. You are maybe our most faithful listener. Now you have the chance to actually be a host. How do you feel?
Well, it's quite an honor, to be honest, and quite out of the blue. But you know what? I'll do what I can. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity, and I'll try not to turn everyone off of this show. That would be very sad.
Well, it's going to be a great show. Today we're going to talk about something called CRISPR. I don't know if anybody out there in radio land has heard of it, but CRISPR is a fascinating topic, and it has a great deal to do, not just with science. I'm sure Dr. Elizabeth Rex, who we had on a few weeks ago, would be a wealth of information on this topic, but it's got a great deal of impact on how we see human nature, how we see our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, how we understand disease and suffering. And so we're going to go into some really weird places today, so I'm sure John Studi is going to miss it. But Justin, I want to first thank you for stepping in last minute. John and I were about to air, and something came up, and, well, Justin, you know Studi. He's mysterious.
I do.
And he just disappears.
He is.
And
right, he just disappears. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where he is right now, but I'm sure we'll find out next week. He's just a weird guy, kind of mysterious, so I'm looking forward to stories he's going to bring back next week.
Yeah, it should be interesting to hear what he says, because, like you were saying, he can be quite the mystery, and you can never really know for certain what he's going to do.
John
will always surprise you somehow.
Yes, John Studi is a mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in another mystery, and then maybe a burrito shell. Yeah. Something like that.
More or less, I think. Yeah.
Well, in any case, we're going to talk about CRISPR today. It's really a fascinating subject, and there's tons of stuff out there. I came across it maybe a week or two ago, and I was really excited to talk about it on the show because, Justin, I don't know how much you keep up with it. Well, you were going to school originally for pharmaceutical science, weren't you?
That was kind of a big plan in the past. I never actually got into doing it per se, but the interest was there. This stuff is kind of fascinating, even though I'll admit I'm not too familiar or too schooled in the nitty-gritties of a lot of the empirical sciences.
Yeah.
But I still find it's really fascinating stuff when you really delve into the stuff and what we've discovered and learned about ourselves and about the world just through those sciences. It's astounding,
right,
what's going on there.
Yeah, it's really I don't know. I find it completely fascinating, and we talk on the show regularly about how the focus on empirical science has really damaged philosophy and theology and how we understand the totality of the human person. But that's not to say that the empirical sciences aren't important, and I think this is one case where the empirical sciences are slated to do really a remarkable amount of good, but if it's not coupled with ethics and it's not coupled with the ancient and beautiful wisdom of the church and of ancient philosophy, empirical science is about to do greater damage than the A-bomb, the H-bomb could ever dream of.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's kind of becoming like a tyrant of destruction, kind of guised as altruism in a sense. It can be crazy.
Yeah, and if we look at the sciences as some other things that have come up, in recent times, things like stem cell research. Well, stem cell research is potentially really good, but the problem is empirical sciences are not really good at making distinctions, and whether that's on purpose or not is a different argument. But embryonic stem cell research has actually never proven to provide really any benefit, and they just kill embryos, kill babies for the sake of this. Adult stem cell research has provided a wealth of scientific progress in the health field and everything. But, when we talk about stem cells in the general culture, people think, well, we got to have stem cells, and we make the distinction between embryonic and adult, and people seem to think that if we're against embryonic, we're against all stem cell research, when in reality we're actually promoting the good side of it and trying to get rid of the bad side of it. And then, I don't know, people like you, and I don't know, Justin, if you have ever encountered this, but, in my life, I just get labeled that as, some idealist, alt-right wingnut that's against science, and that's actually the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't gotten that a whole lot. There are, I'll say no one has said it to my face exactly.
Yeah.
That I'm kind of a alt-right person. But, I mean, there are times where I'm presenting something that is contrary to the current status quo in this culture of death, and it's I usually don't get a whole lot of resentment. I guess around here, the people that I associate with, they might be sort of like me and not be too fond of conflict, and so they don't push it. But I can oftentimes just see it in their facial expressions, just something of almost like astonishment, like how are you present here and possessing this kind of worldview, and so that kind of makes me chuckle sometimes inside. I don't laugh when I'm in front of them.
Well, Justin, your intellect and charisma is well beyond the years of either John or I, and probably put together. So that is probably for a few reasons. By the way, when do you move back to Minnesota? I'm gonna put you on edge right here on the air. When do you come home?
Yeah, it's mostly official. My dad is flying out here on Tuesday, June 20th. That's when he lands here. On Wednesday, I'm supposed to get a pod delivered, and we're packing it up. And then Thursday, the 23rd, if everything has gone smoothly, me and my dad, we just head on out. And it's about 24 hours of driving. So my guess is we'd arrive sometime on Saturday, maybe Sunday.
Saturday, the 24th
really
of June?
Lax. What was that?
Saturday, the 24th of June?
Yes, that's kind of the plan.
So
yeah, because if we basically do 12 hours of driving each day.
So at some point here, when you're you might have to fill in for me. I'm going to be on paternity leave end of August, so
that's right.
You might
I'm pretty excited about that.
So ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Justin Zimmich and John Studi are going to probably be filling in here.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's. I don't think the world is ready for that, but the world wasn't ready for John Studi anyway. So.
I mean, whether they're ready or not, I guess it's going to happen, and they'll just have to deal with it.
Exactly. But the reason I ask is John and I on air have talked, I think, a couple times about Extreme Faith Camp, where we basically help kids understand the faith, including the wisdom of Aristotle, the beauty and truth of Thomas Aquinas, and We sing the Thomistic hymns during adoration and things like that. That starts June 24th, the day that you are slated to get back. So, maybe you could come and do a live show at camp with us later that week if you're not too tired. But
that would be awesome.
That remains to be seen, but it'd be great to have you. Live show at Extreme Faith Camp, that'd be fantastic.
For sure, definitely.
So
we'll see what I can make work when I get back there.
Well, as far as today goes, talking about CRISPR. CRISPR, again, it's just a fascinating topic. It stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. So I think that's pretty much sums up the show. We're 11 minutes in. People can stop listening now. They know what it is. It's all over, right? It's just that easy?
Yeah.
No?
No, probably not.
All right. Well, maybe we'll get into it then. CRISPR, again, the Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. Fascinating. The origins of this comes from a bacterial defense. So, just like you and I, Justin, get sick from, the flu or food poisoning or whatever else, it's because of either bacteria or viruses. Yes?
Yes. Yep.
Great. But bacteria get attacked by viruses too, which when I first read that, I don't know why it shocked me. I mean, it makes sense.
Right.
But I guess I never really thought of it. So if they get attacked by viruses, they, like us, need some kind of defense system, right? So that's what this Cas9 or CRISPR is. It's the bacterial defense system against viruses. Most of the time, bacteria, when they get infected with a virus, will die. But for the lucky ones that survive, they have a protein in their defense system called Cas9. And what it does is take a copy of the virus, and then when that bacteria is infected again, what the Cas9 does is it actually analyzes every bit of DNA in the bacteria and destroys anything that looks different from the original DNA copy. So it kind of, if you think of your fridge, it kind of takes the virus DNA and puts it in the CRISPR. It quarantines it off to the side so it doesn't affect the rest of the organism. So that's kind of a little bit of the scientific background. I mean, I'm a scientist of the highest order because I'm a theologian, and so well, that's a philosophy joke. Justin, did you catch that?
I did catch that.
All right. It's tough when you're just on the phone. Justin's not live. I miss just looking at somebody on the radio. It's not the same.
Right. It's a bit hard not to judge my how I'm taking this all in by not seeing my stupid-looking face. So,
Justin, you surely have a face. I don't know if it's stupid-looking or not, but you certainly have a face.
It looks like something, I guess.
Yeah, well, it has to. It can't look like nothing because then you'd be ex nihilo, and well, that would be weird.
Yeah, that would. Yeah.
So, anyways, the basic idea is that, like our antibodies in our body, when we get an infection, they take note of it, and so if we get that infection again, our antibodies know how to fight it off. And this one is similar, but the big difference is that when the bacteria protein called Cas9 recognizes the infestation, it actually alters the DNA of the bacteria. And that's very different than how our white cells and T cells and all of that attack an invading foreign thing.
Right.
And so in the bacteria, the DNA is actually altered. So that's kind of where it comes from. Justin, do you want to kind of take this idea down, well, whatever road you want, positive, negative? What do you think some of the implications are here? Because I want to kind of apply the science to what it can do, and then I want to apply, you know, what kind of ethics should we apply to this? So kind of a two-step process over the next, I don't know, 45 minutes or so.
Okay.
So we'll start with just whatever path you want to go down.
Okay, well, I suppose the path that I would initially take is, let's first, based on what you've so accurately, coherently assessed about what CRISPR is and Cas9, I'd like to go down the route of first seeing, okay, what use does this have? What good can it affect for us? Which is what is often bolstered by much of the scientific community. And really, what I see as the greatest good, the greatest altruism that this could potentially bring about, that a lot of its proponents put forward, is that it could be a great help, and a great help to basically stop or prevent horrendous genetic diseases that many people unfortunately have to suffer through and endure. And I mean, imagine being able to run into a child who has a terrible genetic disease, regardless of what it is, what it might be, and here we have a cure for it, a way to stop that. Much like, I mean, nowadays we don't have to, for example, worry about smallpox because of the vaccine that was made for it, and so we are free from having to endure that particular disease. And so this is a potential good that could come from this sort of technology. So there's the good. But in order to truly assess the nature of something, or whether we should utilize or incorporate something, we have to look at all possible consequences or outcomes or effects that it could have. And whereas, yes, it could prevent and stop genetic diseases, it also has the potential to be used in altering our DNA in ways that it should not be altered, and essentially make our DNA, for lack of a better word, not human, and not what we are made as and meant to be.
Yeah, so, I thought of kind of the same thing, I know a scientist from Berkeley saying that CRISPR is going to end genetic disease. So you think about things like trisomy 13, that's a third chromosome on the 13th pair, or trisomy 19 or trisomy 21, which is known as Down syndrome. And these are all genetic diseases. And, one of the ways, the way that this Cas9 protein works within CRISPR is that, Justin, if I take your DNA, I can put your DNA in the protein, basically programming it to what your healthy DNA should look like. And then I inject that back into you, and because the protein now basically is programmed like a computer, it will scan all of your DNA and every cell of your body and mutate it to what has been programmed in the Cas9 protein. So basically, I can put in the information I want into this protein, and then it's going to copy that onto every single bit of DNA in your body. So if if I find out, Justin, let's pretend that you're my baby, okay?
Okay.
This will be fun.
Yes.
Justin the baby.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Baby Nelson. All right, Justin the Baby Nelson. This is great. Or maybe Baby Face Nelson. I don't know.
Baby Face Nelson.
Are you a gangster from the 20s?
What was that?
I said, are you a gangster from the 20s?
I could be. Yeah, see? Yeah.
I think that was a perfect imitation, Justin.
Well, thank you.
So if
I practice all the time.
If I find out in utero that you have Down syndrome, so you have a third chromosome on your, is it 21st pair? I can take your whole DNA and cut off that third chromosome. So now your 21st pair only has the 2 that a healthy DNA makeup would have. And I program that into CRISPR or into the Cas9 protein, and I inject it back into you. And now that protein is going to go through every bit of DNA in your body and eliminate the third chromosome on the 21st pair, essentially getting rid of the Down syndrome. And this expert from Berkeley is saying we're going to see the end of genetic disease with this technology, and this has the potential to save millions of lives, because across the globe, somewhere around 95% of Down syndrome babies are aborted in the womb. And that's a heartbreaking figure, because I don't know if you've ever spent time around children with Down syndrome, but they are the oftentimes quintessential bit of joy that this world is missing.
They really are. I admit I don't have an extensive amount of experience with those suffering through Down syndrome, but from what I've seen in my brief interactions with those individuals, it's just astounding to me, just the joy that radiates off of them, and it's so contagious. Whether I see one as I'm walking around in the grocery store, or I'm taking a walk out on the sidewalk or something, and it may be, I may not even say anything, it may not be an interaction, it may be a brief interaction of hello, maybe a little bit of a small talk, it doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure every single time I've encountered them, there's just been this joy radiated.
Absolutely.
And it's just so contagious. And even if I'm having a pretty rough day and I'm just feeling pretty terrible, whether mentally or physically, it's just that burden on me is just lessened and lifted. Even if it's just a little bit around those people, and it's just really fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's, like you said, it's just it's atrocious, and it is heartbreaking that so many are just, must be blunt, murdered.
Right. Well, I'll throw a quick free commercial out there right now to anybody listening, is that there's a great organization here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, called Prenatal Partners for Life. And they actually have their benefit dinner tonight, their yearly benefit dinner, which I'm honored to be at in just a little while here. But their whole business, it's a nonprofit, their whole business is to work with families that have been giving difficult diagnoses during the prenatal period. And so that figure of 95% of Down syndrome babies are aborted. Many times it's because doctors will do the screening, and prenatal screening, and tell them, your baby to be, even though it's a baby now, but they'll say, your baby to be is going to be born with Down syndrome. Would you like to terminate? and 95% of the time they are terminated. And it should be noted that the prenatal screening for Down syndrome is not 100% accurate. There have been false positives that have been given, and to think that a perfectly healthy baby, not that that makes it any worse, but a perfectly healthy baby could have been aborted because of a test that didn't work.
Right.
But anyway, if anybody out there wants to support this great nonprofit that works with families that have been diagnosed with trisomy 13, 19, 21, as well as many other difficult diagnoses preterm, please, prenatalpartnersforlife.org. That's prenatalpartnersforlife.org. Mary Kellett is the founder and the president, and she's done great work, not just here in America, but all over the world, and has given great talks and conferences to medical personnel all over the world. She's also discovered things in hospitals like futility of care policies, where hospitals will actually let certain patients die in order to save money on supplies or whatever else. So, and those policies are hidden. They're not made known, and sadly this is the case at different children's hospitals. I won't name any in particular, but there's terrible things going on out there. But it's a little bit of a side conversation, but really it's getting to the heart that, if 95% of Down syndrome babies are aborted, what would happen if we have a cure for something like Down syndrome? That we could simply just inject it into the baby, perhaps in utero, and that baby won't have Down syndrome. I can't say that would be a terrible thing. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't honor those with Down syndrome. They deserve the same respect and dignity we all do. But I think it's just the idea that the cure is there could really empower a lot of families to feel like they have the option of saying, instead of saying either we struggle with this or we kill it, kill the baby, we can say, well, we can either struggle with it or we can cure the baby. And I think that alone would get rid of a lot of abortions that are happening. So
I think so, yeah.
I think at the least just giving the option to parents would be a wonderful gift to humanity.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Of course, with technology, especially medical technology, there's always two sides to the coin. So while Cas9 and CRISPR could potentially cure things like genetic blindness or genetic, say, color blindness, joint issues, heart issues, different chromosomal defects. All of these things have the potential of being cured. Even cancer as a whole has the potential of being cured by this because of how specifically CRISPR and Cas9 targets mutations in the genes. But, Justin, why don't you take us down some other road?
Well, again, because we're talking about here essentially altering of one's genes, and on a material level, our genetic makeup, that is what comprises our bodies, and theologically and philosophically speaking, we are beings that are the composite of both body and soul. That is part of our nature. That is part of who we are.
Right.
So our body is just as much of us as our soul is, and so to tinker with that and make it something other than it is, essentially we're making it other than human, which this has the potential to do in regards to this sort of genetic manipulation. And also, oddly enough, because with this, it can alter the germline within the genes, that is reproductive cells. And when that happens, not only are you affecting the particular entity whose genes you're manipulating, but that then will pass on whatever changes or alterations were made, those will pass on to any offspring that come from the original altered entity, altered person, and so on and so forth. And then it would go down from the first progeny, the second progeny would then pass it on to the third, and you just have this web of alterations that have gone forth. And I was just thinking right now, it just popped into my head, we have oftentimes in this kind of, in our culture right now, people strongly advocating the right to choose. So, hypothetically, if I decided to get some sort of weird gene manipulation, and then I cast it on to my children, well, what if they didn't want that sort of gene manipulation? Suddenly they're forced to have that sort of gene manipulation and having to deal with that and so on and so forth. And so, I don't know, I think it's kind of, it just seems kind of silly, and it also goes into the face of that kind of free choice kind of mentality that is even running rampant in our culture right now. But we're, essentially, it's having us play God in making us, trying to make us into something other, which actually, I suppose if we want to kind of turn this back more in a theological kind of perspective, because with our fallen nature, we are no longer what we are meant to be. We were meant to be something much greater, that is being in a state of grace, in full friendship and relationship with God. That is what we are called to do. That is our purpose in life. And through our sins, and particularly the first fall with original sin, and then also our particular sins, we've lost that and we have to attain that basically through the grace of God. But there is that inner desire within us to become more than what we are. It's innate in us. It is rooted into our very being. But then when you take God out of the picture, well, now you're having things like this, where yes, we have that urge to be more than what we are, and so now, instead of utilizing the truths that God has put into us, and there's also corresponding with His graces, we've completely put them out of the picture, and now try to make ourselves more than what we are through our own means, through these sorts of mutations and manipulations, which, of course, don't solve the problem, they just make it worse. But
so, one of the things that I was thinking about while you were, I was kind of pondering while you were pontificating, is, with all these genetic mutations, you're talking about, if we do this, the next generation is going to inherit whatever we do, and likewise. And ultimately, once we start this, it's not something, we can't put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak.
Right.
Once it's out, it's out. And, I think it's interesting. We should continue to pursue answers to medical quandaries. We should continue to pursue eradicating disease. It's part of human nature to desire the eternal. And part of that is we, as mortal beings, wrestle with the idea of death and suffering. And so I think part of our pursuit of medicine is indicative of our desire for eternal life. Because if we weren't afraid of death, or if we didn't have a healthy fear of death, I should say, or if we didn't pursue long lives, I think it would tell us something about our nature too, where maybe as humans, once we die, we die. But I think the fact that we pursue medicine, we pursue health, and pursue all of this stuff to the degree that we do, it tells us something of our eternal desires. But we've seen that as we develop things like, say, antibiotics, bacteria and viruses and all that adapt to our initial answer, and we have to redevelop things. And so I think part of the question is with genetic defects, if we find an answer to that, is there going to be a different kind of mutation that comes up? I don't think a lot of times within the scientific field there's a lot of questioning of if this, then what? We just kind of say, well, we can, so let's do. And that's probably right, because we don't have the foresight to think about, well, okay, if this happens, then what comes next? Now, there's a big difference between a genetic mutation and a bacterial or viral infection. But if we change one part of our DNA to, say, rid ourselves of Down syndrome or cancer or blindness, how is that going to affect how the rest of our DNA interacts with that new DNA that has been posited or subtracted from the initial genome? So I think there's some things there that maybe we haven't really thought through yet. Or maybe people have thought through it and don't really care.
That also might be possible.
That might be possible too. But the other thing, you said something about there's a big push in our culture right now with the right to choose. We want our choice here, choice there, choice everywhere. My question with this is, what about designer babies?
Oh, yeah.
Go in and say, okay, we have kind of my baby's initial DNA structure, but, can we do something with the eyes? I would really like blue eyes or red eyes or, purple eyes or something really unique. And I want, naturally blue hair, naturally whatever, this hair, that hair. And we go in and start designing our babies. And this has already happened to some degree with, what was it, in the early 2000s, there was the first child conceived with 3 different people's DNA.
I think so, yeah.
So we've already gone down the path of genetically manipulating children. So it's not out of the picture to say this is going to get abused for designer babies. I think it's pretty obvious that it probably will be used to make designer babies. But what does that say about our view of the human person, that we're only going to love a person if it conforms to my idea for it?
Right. It is a very, very selfish mentality. And especially when you look to the natural relationship that's supposed to exist between 2 spouses. They come together and they have a child. That, by its very nature, is supposed to be almost like an antithesis to selfishness.
Right.
Like you now, both the mother and the father now have to give of themselves for the child. And that's completely in the face of that mentality when you get into designer babies and you're basically making, you're essentially utilizing that child for yourself. It's no longer the gift of self, it now becomes kind of, I don't know, it's again just kind of promoting one's own desires as opposed to sacrifice, and which in and of itself is completely detrimental to the relationship of family, because it's completely contrary to what family is. Yeah. And so you've demolished it at its foundation, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, when you... Now, granted, I haven't had a child, nor, for that matter, genetically modified one, nor would I ever genetically modify one. But it seems that if... it seems that a kind of mentality that could come from designer baby is that it's almost like you've created, I don't know, some sort of tool or object or means, as
right.
opposed to you have created another person.
Right, the person becomes simply an object, not a subject.
Right.
You know, and I'm just thinking, like, how upset do we get over things like, you know, whether or not Lance Armstrong used steroids in his 7 times winning the Tour de France? Or how upset did we get when, you know, everybody found out Barry Bonds was using steroids to hit 70-some home runs? I mean... Mm-hmm. We get upset when people use artificial means to kind of skirt the system. But what if I say, you know what, I know I'm having a boy, I want him to have some superhuman muscular development, and I alter the gene to do that? I mean,
right.
If we're going to get so bent out of shape over... you know, people using steroids, my goodness, what if I just alter it from the very basis of their existence?
Oh, right. And I mean, it is kind of something, I guess, now my mind's kind of going off into, like, sci-fi land.
Perfect,
where
that's
you're
what I
talking
want.
about, like, kind of like muscle manipulation, making someone, more muscularly fit, everything. It's like, what if we just, you know, design such people to be essentially like super soldiers?
Yeah,
and now
that's
you're
one of the
like
arguments surrounding this.
You're creating things, and then you are basically establishing on your own whim the purpose of this creation. Like, you create someone who is has great physical stamina, endurance, and strength, and say, okay, you are assigned to be a super soldier. Or then you can kind of manipulate intellect genes to bolster someone's intelligence or something along those lines to be a scientist or something. It's just like, since when did we become a sci-fi Soviet Russia? I mean, it's just... so again, like we were saying, you're turning people into objects as opposed to subjects.
Right. And then, you know, take the idea of a super soldier. What happens if, you know, Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il or, you know, North Korea gets a hold of that technology? Because China is actually already doing human testing on this, and America hasn't gotten to that point. Now, China might be rushing it a little more than we are. You know, they may not care as much about the safety of the human subjects, but, you know, China and North Korea are allies. So it's not far-fetched to think that one of our supreme enemies could actually fall into using this technology to create super soldiers.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, and really when we talk about the ethical implications of this and, you know, how does it change our view of a human person, we can't control if another country abuses it.
Right.
But that thought alone, I think, is what drives a lot of people to say, well, they might have it, so we need to have it too. And we don't care about the ethical implications because we just want to keep our people safe. It's kind of, I don't know, altruism run amok.
Right, yeah. It's like take the nuclear arms race and crank it up to 11, pretty much.
Yeah, you know, and it's scary too because, you know, again, once we go down this path, we cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak. Once it's out, it's out.
Right.
And this isn't to just say it's not worth pursuing, but I think there's a lot of questions that we have to answer as a human race of whether or not this is something we really want to pursue.
Very much so. And I think, now again, I have my research on this topic is in regards to getting out to the details of it is somewhat lax, but I think in regards to well, first off, I think there would have to be made a distinction between this manipulation with somatic cells and germline cells, first and foremost. Somatic being non-reproductive cells and germline being reproductive cells. Sort of in the lines of stem cell research, where you can do sort of research on somatic cells. But then again, some people do them on embryos, which is intrinsically evil, always unethical. And I would think with this, as far as germline, I would say that would be in all instances a no-go. You would at the very minimum have to draw the line there, and so you cannot do this sort of manipulation with the germline.
So explain what you're saying, because your line in the sand for this is what?
It would at least be germline. So you would not be able to use this sort of manipulation on germline reproductive cells. Maybe on somatic, maybe. I think you would have to look more into it. But from what I've looked into this, I would think at the very minimum that bar would be germline cells, if not even extended to some, or maybe all, I'm not sure, but at least some somatic cells, maybe even that, but
well, I mean,
I don't know.
The Cas9 protein is actually applicable to every possible cell out there they found.
Well, that's true.
You can use Cas9 on germs, on vegetation, on humans, on animals. It's so universal that you can manipulate just about anything you want. They've used it on plants already to develop probiotic cultures within, say, corn. And so Cas9, because basically Cas9 is a blank motherboard. In a computer, you can program it to do anything you want. Because it's basically the outer structure. It's a DNA scissors, so to speak. And all you have to do is put in the information to the inside of it of telling it what to do.
I suppose that's true, yeah.
You know, so the line in the sand really is whatever humanity decides to make it. And if history is any indicator, we're not really good at drawing lines in the sand and sticking to them. I don't know if this is shocking to you, but it doesn't really work that well.
Yeah, it usually doesn't, and oftentimes, even though most of the time we don't adhere to the line in the sand, oftentimes the line is poorly drawn to begin with.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating technology, and of course, Justin, you and I, neither one of us are bioethicists. I have an extensive background in moral theology as well as philosophical ethics, but I'm not a bioethicist. I don't have a lot of background in the medicinal sciences and biological sciences. But I know you have an extensive background in philosophy in general and ethics and those things, but again, not necessarily on the biological side.
Right.
And so this, of course, as always on the Lost Voice radio program, we're just having a freewheeling discussion. We never claim to have answers. We claim to have fun trying to discover answers.
Right.
But it's a fascinating technology, really.
It is.
But boy, there's some serious ramifications if we don't harness this power well. I mean, the atomic bomb, we dropped 2 bombs. There's not been another major one dropped since World War II.
Right.
And so I think there's some indication that we know as humans where to draw the line and to not go beyond it. But I don't have a lot of confidence as far as the biological side of things go. An atomic bomb is obvious. If we start an atomic war with Russia or North Korea or Iran, there's not going to be humanity left. But the human genome as a whole being altered and passed down generation to generation, that's a much slower destruction of what it means to be human. And, what happens if, everybody in Minnesota decides, hey, we want our babies to have the strongest muscle composition they can have, and everybody in Minnesota alters that. But then everybody in New York goes after supreme intellect, superhuman intellect, and people all over the world start pursuing the extremes of, the human faculties. What happens in 5 or 6 or 7 generations? That's a very potentially frightening thing because we can't go backwards with the technology.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a scary thought, and it's also something that I suppose a curiosity that popped into my head just now, particularly when you were speaking of, let's suppose all people from Minnesota were all genetically altered for muscular enhancement, whereas people in New York were genetically modified for intellectual superiority. What happens, or what would happen, I kind of wonder, if you have 2 individuals who are both genetically altered.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I just lost Justin on his last comment there for the hour. I'll see if I can get him back on the phone to finish up what he was saying. But CRISPR is again, it's technology that... Justin, we back?
Yes, I'm there.
All right, good. I lost Justin for a minute. But Justin's back, so you don't have to listen to me for the last 7 minutes trying to figure out what to say. Justin, what was one of your final thoughts here?
Well, like you were saying, with it was most of a curiosity with what you said. Like certain people are genetically modified for muscular enhancement, and another are genetically modified for intellectual enhancement. And I just was wondering just now, what would happen if we had the 2 people that had different genetic mutations, if they came together and reproduced? What would happen with that child? Would they have both? Or would there be some sort of weird inconsistency that would make reproduction impossible
this brings up a really
detrimental.
This is a fascinating subject, because if we're talking about eliminating genetic mutations, by using genetic mutations, is that going to actually compound the problem?
Right.
And I don't know if that's really been thought of, because on the surface it looks like CRISPR simply gets rid of a genetic mutation, but by what means? A genetic mutation.
Right.
So, if Justin, you get married and you have a little girl, and your little girl marries my little boy who's on the way, and they were both genetically modified humans, what happens to their child?
Right.
Are they going to have 4 chromosomes on what should be a pair? Are they going to have 1? Are they going to skip a pair altogether? I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And,
right.
The reality is,
right.
because it's such uncharted territories, it's not something we can really project.
Exactly.
It's more or less trial and error. And so the real question is, do we really want to go down that road if we can only discover by trial and error? If the downside of it means that we're going to forever alter the human genome. I mean, that is the ultimate Russian roulette.
Right. Yes. It is an extreme gamble, and if people are willing to make those sorts of gambles and not care so much about the consequences, it's kind of like, well, then you really don't have much care for human dignity.
Right.
So if you don't have much care for human dignity, why would I want you trying to save the human race?
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's risky business for sure, and we have a lot of questions to pursue. And there's no doubt that this has the potential to improve the lives of potentially millions, and allow for millions of lives to actually make it out of the womb. If the parents again have the opportunity to cure Down syndrome and give that child life instead of feeling like they're forced to abort from the doctors, this could save millions of lives. But is the risk? I'm just going to pose the question, and I'm not going to answer it because I'm a radio host and I can do that and it's easy. Is the risk of how this technology could be abused worth the benefit of how it can be used? I don't have an answer to that. And I'm a 28-year-old theologian, philosopher pursuing a PhD. I don't have to have the answer for it, but I do have to understand moral theology to be able to converse with people about it. The technology as a whole, I don't know. Jury's out for me.
Yeah. Again, I guess from what we've been saying all along, it's very uncharted territory. The possible repercussions of it are quite astonishing in both extremes. Very astonishing. And yeah, it's a potentially extremely powerful technology, and we have to be extremely prudent and wise in if we decide to utilize it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said, Justin. I think as always, we as humans in general in the postmodern age, the post-Christian age of our world, we really do need to rediscover what it means to be ethical and moral, and not simply by human standards, because those are always changing as we've seen over the last 100 years. But what does it really mean to be moral and ethical in terms of, the true meaning of being human, that is body and soul, created and given by God? We really have to rediscover the core of morality and ethics before we pursue technology that can forever alter the human genome. I can say that much. I'm not wholly against the technology. I think there's great opportunity and benefit here. But I think in order to pursue it, we really need to pursue the higher sciences of philosophy and theology. So that's my input on it. Maybe we can get Dr. Elizabeth Rex on at another time to discuss CRISPR and Cas9, our resident bioethicist. For today, and as always, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Lost Voice radio program. I'd like to thank Justin Zimich for filling in for the missing John Studi, and we'll find out next week just exactly what happened to John Studi. So as always, what was that, Justin?
Oh, I'm sure it'll be an astounding story.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's a great tale.
And to our listeners, please look forward to having Justin Zimich in studio here in just a couple of weeks. It'd be great to get you in, Justin, where we can just all get together and have some great camaraderie.
It should be good.
Anyway, so signing off for the Lost Voice radio program, Jacob Nelson along with Justin Zimich, our guest host today. Have a blessed day, and always pursue the truth, and be sure to pray. God bless.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.